All right. Hello and welcome to today's astrology study group. And we are looking at the chart of yesterday. And before we really get into the chart and the transits and everything, I just actually wanted to have something here for you to look at. But I just wanted to give you something in your mind because we got a few things to look at today, which would be some good planning. We're going to look at some financial astrology aspects. Um, yeah. I'm just thinking what I wanted to share with you. I guess I'll show you my notes. We'll look at that. But just look at this real quick. We'll come back to this because yesterday was kind of significant. And before we move into today, we've got a few things lining up here. I just want to point out we have this was the September 19th, 2022. We have Venus over here, 18 degrees, making a little trine, making a little trine to Uranus, and we'll talk more about that. It's kind of interesting. And the sun over here making a trine over the other way to Pluto. It's kind of like a little double trine. Uh, and then we have our Mercury over here opposing Jupiter. But we'll get into this. I just wanted to mention this because it's interesting, some of these degrees. And then we've got Saturn over here at that 19 or 18 degree, which we'll talk about in a little while. But I just wanted to bring the chart up so you can look at something. But let me get to another share. And let's just look at my notes. I have them here. There we go. And let's talk a little bit about some financial astrology. We talked a little bit about some of this before, but I probably, can't talk about it enough and to drill in some of the key things when you're looking at financial arrangements or transactions, everything from starting a business to buying a car to signing a contract, selling something. These are things to try to consider as much as possible. And we're going to look at the narrowest or shortest amount of time to greater periods of time, because sometimes you can manage things closer within it's like if something is just going to be a few hours away, that's easier to manage than something a few weeks. So we'll start there and we'll look at the void of course void of course moon. So the most common pitfall, and I'll just read this a little bit and then I'll comment on it with some of the notes I gathered for you. The most common pitfall in choosing a date for a future event is picking a date and time when the moon is void of course. The moon is void when she makes no more Ptolemaic aspects to any of the planets before she leaves the current sign. The moment that the moon enters the next sign, she is no longer void. The moon will be void of course for a short period of time, at least every 2.5 days, and most astrological calendars list these time periods. All right, so I'll explain that. The Ptolemaic aspects are according to the major aspects, according to Ptolemy, which are your conjunction, sextile, trine, square, and opposition. Doesn't take in account the inconjuncts or half squares, semi squares, squares and halves, anything like that. Although I kind of look at the inconjuncts a little bit and kind of take that into consideration myself, just because. But it's kind of definitely you want to take these major ones. So right now, actually, we just in probably like 2 minutes, the moon will move out of being void of course. It moved. It's like it makes its last aspect and then it's not making anything until it changes signs. So it kind of depends on where the planets are, how long that will be. And as you know, we have Pluto at the end of Capricorn, and that's for the most part our kind of tail degree, right now, because it's not moving very fast. Once that moves into Aquarius, we might have not much at the ends of signs for a little while, so the moon void of course could be longer, could be more hours. So right now, today, the 20th of September, the moon made its last aspect this morning about 11:30, and then it's gone all day, and then now at 4:38 it will change signs. It will change into Leo, so that will then make its next move. So it's like it kind of goes offline when it goes void, what they call it, void of course. It's just there's no more aspects until it changes signs. So the energies can get a little bit flaky, a little bit off because the moon is sleeping. It's kind of like your emotions are kind of off, and you can get a lot of times that they say nothing will come of it. Nothing will happen. If you sign a contract, something won't come of it. Now you can use this to your advantage if you don't want to do something, or if you have to do something under duress, or do something, then you want to fail. Then you would want to definitely do it at that time if you want to get out of something. So the surest way to make sure a project fails is to start it on a void of course moon. Sometimes you just might need to know that. Now, sometimes you would like for this to fail. For example, if you're on a diet and your best buddy wants you to make chocolate chip cookies, start mixing them up on the void of course moon. And if you don't forget an important ingredient like the eggs, you'll burn the cookies or something will happen. Void of course means the moon has finished making any major Ptolemaic aspects. We just said that before it moves in the next sign. The moon is no longer void when it enters the next sign. All right, so that again could be hours, it could be all day, guess again, it would depend on how long it would be. But then again, it's mainly hours, not days. Okay. Now, the next thing you want to look at is when Mercury is retrograde. And you should know that this is retrograde every 3 months for a period of time about 3 weeks. So these periods cause you to reflect and evaluate the previous 3 months when Mercury was in direct motion. Is in direct motion. Okay. Retrograde periods are the time to redo things concerning the planet that is retrograde. Since Mercury rules vehicles, it would be a good time to repair a vehicle, redo things, clean, reconsider, research, redo, all of that type of stuff. And like it just said here, it caused you to reflect on the previous 3 months, and then you do a lot of that back work for a few weeks, and then it goes direct again. But now, one other thing a astute astrologer would be good to know is the shadow period. And the shadow is, it says this means the effect of the planet's retrograde will continue well after it has gone direct, and cease only when the planet reaches the degree where it initially stationed to go retrograde. All right, what does that mean? Let's say that Mercury goes retrograde at 10 degrees. Doesn't matter what sign, just say 10 degrees. And say it retrogrades back to 0 degrees. And then it goes direct, at 0 degrees. And then it starts moving forward. Well, the shadow period is that whole time when it was at, from 10 going backward down to 0. So it's got to go past that place where it retrograded and then start giving new territory. So once Mercury then goes into 11 degrees of whatever, it's in new territory. So we have a little bit of time where it has to go over. It's not like a review. It's just saying, all right, I told you this already. Did you got this? Okay. I told you this here, this, that, and the other. Do you understand? Okay. Do you get this, that, and the other? Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So that goes on until it moves into the new territory. It just has to, it's sort of like Mercury has to take note of all the things that was going on once it was retrograde. It was like on vacation, so to speak. All right. The next one is Venus. Venus represents the money you earn $1 at a time. If you work very hard for your money, therefore you might want to spend it wisely. When Venus is retrograde, you forget all that hard work and you spend more than you should on things you don't need. Whatever you buy will almost be impossible to sell, and you will be stuck with the loss for a very long time. Venus is retrograde for 40 days at a time. This is, a month and a third. And if you have a shop till you drop personality, it's a very, very long 40 days. Voice of experience, it seems like everyone has an offer you just can't refuse, and everything you could possibly wish to own is being offered at rock bottom prices. Venus retrograde reminds us that there is no such thing as a bargain. This applies to everything. Houses bought under retrograde Venus become money pits. You will never recover your costs. The cars that you buy will be a lemon. You'll have to keep putting money into it. Anything of value is not. It's not worth it. It's not a good time for big purchasers or anything of value. All right, the next one is Mars, and Mars is retrograde for a longer time, about 80 days. It's almost 3 months. It's 2 months and 2/3 of a month, whatever you want to say it. During a recent Mars retrograde, this is from Kay, what's her name? Oh God, can't remember the name of the lady. Hold on. What is this lady's name? Kay Shrinker, Shrinker. She gathered this. This is from her book, Financial Astrology. So she said, in 1999, NATO bombed Kosovo in the former Yugoslavia. The bombing started on March 18th and ended on June 4th. Mars retro means do not be the one to initiate action. Otherwise, you will lose. If you do the first punch, you will lose. On May 11th to July 19th, 2001, was a Mars retrograde period where the U.S. courts couldn't seem to complete any judgments. The postponed execution of convicted Oklahoma bomber Timothy McVeigh made headlines. The execution was temporarily stayed due to lost FBI documents. Whatever. The problem is that the parties who initiate the action lose. That's a very good thing right there, right there. Whatever person or whatever party again instigates anything is the one who loses. Here are some memorable examples. Hitler invaded Russia. I'm trying to get this where you can see it. During World War II. And you remember that he didn't do so good on that one. That's that was a big one. Argentina invaded the Falklands. Egypt attacked Israel, resulting in the 6-Day War. And President Johnson launched a bombing attack on North Vietnam. All not good for the person who initiated this. Okay, in addition to the other problems of a retrograde Mars, it also tends to be a time when you're accident prone. Mars is primarily a defender at this time. He rules wars and prosecution. So when retrograde Mars is impulsive and ambitious, so it tends to be sloppy, and his actions are misinterpreted. Takeovers are misinterpreted. Acquisitions become foolish, and purchases of all sorts are ill-conceived. When Mars is retrograde, the best thing to do is postpone the fight, the quarrel, the argument, the battle. Any action you initiate will be overturned, and you will not achieve your objectives. It is a very good time to practice patience. Okay, I would recommend that it is best to avoid doing important business during this time frame. This time spells trouble, i.e., lawyers are expensive. If you start a job during Mars retrograde, you will start it with a tough relationship of some sorts with your boss or superiors or whoever. Other business arrangements will be difficult. Cars purchased will be prone to accidents. Another point of information. Avoid starting a new relationship, and for heaven's sakes, don't have sex for the first time. Elective surgery isn't a good idea either. A wound will take extra time to heal. Mars retrograde affects the energy level. It is if our get up and go, sat down and stopped, or got up and went, giving into the idea that your body really needs to rest is very often disconcerting. But if you don't give in, your body will find a way to force the issue. Okay, this is a good one. This is definitely a good one to know, to think about. Um, I was thinking can you imagine being like a fighter, like a boxer or a mixed martial art person? Your strategy for fights would be defensive. It's like you just sit there and you let your opponent be aggressive and throw the first punch and do the first strike, and you'll probably win the fight. He'll probably do something stupid. Boy, that could be alone. I mean, that would be alone a really good thing to just go through in all the sporting events. All right, another good one to know. So before I move on, you see how it went from a few hours to, months. So sometimes you can't help things, but other times you can. Say, you know, you could definitely move around like a moon void, of course, because that again could be a few hours. You might have to look and plan ahead for Mercury, Venus, and Mars, which will do. We'll look at that when we flip over the charts, we'll see when their action time is. All right, a couple more things on this. It's also good to know too, if you have any kind of a project or something new, you'd like to time it, if at all possible, with the new moon or around a new moon. If it's not it doesn't have to be at the actual day, but it could be around that time. It could be a few days before, a few days after, even a week after, because the moon is, it's in this phase of building up. So you would definitely want to have it before it gets full. If it's even a day or two closer to being full, it's better than if you have to sacrifice some things. It's like, oh gosh, it's gonna be close to being full, but then Mars goes direct. Well, that's fine. That's better. Again, sometimes you can't always help in time and put everything in order, but this is the advantage of having an astrological calendar. And I kind of want to do that as one of my next projects, is to make something kind of for the year. Llewellyn has a great astrological calendar that you can hang up on the wall, and it has, the calendar day, and then on each day it has all the aspects, and then moon void, of course. But I kind of would like to make one a little different, like a day calendar, where you can see the month at a glance with maybe colored times, kind of like a ephemeris in action, where you can just have like maybe all the Mars times would be red, like a muddy red for it being retrograde, and maybe Venus would be maybe like a sick green when it's retrograde. Maybe Mercury's like a mucky darker blue or something. I don't know, just something like that. So you could see at a glance, like, oh, okay, and then how many days or months is left to that. All right, another couple of things. Jupiter retro and direct. This is kind of good to know if you're, doing maybe more, I don't know, it could be anything. It could be anything from stock market and day trading to just conducting business, because Jupiter direct seems to encourage people to spend money. Therefore, this is starting like with a business that starts with Jupiter direct will attract more customers who will spend money. Whenever possible, though, try to avoid Jupiter retrograde. It's difficult. Let me make that better. It's difficult to have a shy sales force and stingy customers. Jupiter retrograde means the market will take a time out. Jupiter has a retrograde period of 4 to 5 months. See, it's even longer now. Ugh. When Jupiter's retrograde, the Dow moves in lockstep. So if you follow stock market things now, you'll probably be seeing a downtrend, because we have the Jupiter retro, going back, Aries going back into Pisces. Okay, Jupiter retrograde. It will have a problem with volume during the retrograde periods. The market tends to take a rest. The volume of trading goes down, and people take time to analyze their holdings. This is a good time to be a buyer. You can take your time and do your research. You can find bargains among the high quality investments, maybe even some high flying ones. As soon as Jupiter goes direct, the markets will start inching up again. So you can buy when it's down. All right. Saturn retrograde means the bean counters have taken a lunch break and they're not around to say no or no fair peaking. And as a result, the markets tend to move up. All right, so we can get more into other parts of this the next time we go over, but these are the big ones. So again, just to reiterate, the moon void of course, which is only hours, and then we have Mercury be in retrograde 3 weeks. We have Venus retrograde for 40 days, and we have Mars retrograde for 80 days, and we have Jupiter retrograde for 5 months, and Saturn longer than that. But that's not as much as the inner planets. Okay, these are some good rules. These are some things to keep in mind when you're conducting any kind of business, transactions, contracts, negotiations, buying any expensive items, selling expensive items. These are definitely some things to keep in mind. All right, with that, I'm going to end this and we'll go over to the charts.